Do you find you can't get enough spooky goodness? Then by Jove, you need to check out the Generally Spooky Patreon. For the princely sum of £4 a month, you can enjoy our main episodes a whole day earlier than the general public. If that doesn't float your boat, you can become an £8 a month spooky trooper. You'll get the main episodes early and access to 12 extra Patreon exclusive episodes, with more to come. The episode that really tickles my pickle is about Private Wojtek, a brown bear that served in World War II. As a top draw £12 a month Spookmaster General, you'll be on Cloud 9 with access to our Wee Blether series. In it, my darling wife and I debrief episodes, play games, and chitter-chatter about our goings-on. You'll also become a member of the Spooky Book Club, where Eilidh is currently reading us Peter Pan, having just finished Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Simply marvellous. Did I mention you also get 10% off our quality merchandise if you join? You bet your bacon you do. So come join us. Get your peepers over to patreon.com/generally spooky and support your favourite rapscallions. Tally-ho!
Hi, I'm Kristen.
And I'm Jennifer.
And we're the hosts of Haunted or Hoax, a paranormal investigation podcast where we investigate the legends and history, not just the ghosts.
Our locations range from houses down in Savannah, Georgia, murder houses in the Midwest, to hotels in West Virginia.
Additionally, we get together and go on ghost tours and bring the legends and history to you.
Join us every Tuesday as we discuss the legends, history, and experiences from haunted locations.
Available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Bye!
Hello again, everyone. Here we are, back for a non-Campbell related episode. I hope. I've been promised.
There are, as far as I can tell, no Campbells in this episode.
Oh my god.
I finished the script like a week ago, but I'm fairly confident there are no Campbells.
There might be like a sneaky Campbell just lurking in the middle.
They're always there.
They are always there, to be fair.
In the annals of Scottish history, Campbells are always there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would like to bring up, before we even get to any music, that one of our Patreon subscribers made a very good point that I completely missed and ignored during the Campbell episodes.
What's that?
That it was a Campbell who was murdered in the Appin murder. Colin Campbell was murdered.
Oh, yeah.
And the trial, I'm fairly certain, was held in Inverary.
Oh, my God.
By a Campbell. And it was the third Duke of Argyll, I think, who oversaw the whole thing.
Oh.
Didn't even make that connection. I had so much else going on that I kind of glossed over. That's the thing that happened.
Yep.
We can talk about it more in the blether, but I wanted to say it up top. I missed it, and it should have been in there.
From all the other episode connections, missed that one.
Yep.
Oh, man. Well, we need a part 4 then. That's what that is.
No, I can't. I can't do any more Campbell episodes this season. I need a break.
A little break.
I need just a little break.
Little break. That's funny though, because I think I remembered in part 1, I mentioned Appin, but then totally forgot again until right now.
Well, see, in my research, I kind of came across it, but I focused on other things because we have a whole episode about the Appin murder.
We do.
I didn't concentrate on it. But then I never came back to it.
Yep.
And I never put it in. So I'm upset.
Yes.
I'm going to hang up my laptop.
Don't do that.
I'm retiring.
We need you to tell us what's happening in Scottish history.
Oh my God. I thought I was ill before. Feel sick now. This is the Generally Spooky podcast, where Kieran winds me up.
Yep, and Eilidh tells us about Scottish history, and I don't know, fuck about, I guess.
You fuck around and find out. Every week. That's what you do. That's what you're here for. It's what the people are here for, apparently. Mm-hmm. I get comments all the time about how much they love your jokes. So keep doing what you're doing.
I'm doing me, you guys. I'm Kieran, that's Eilidh. I don't know if we just said that.
We did.
I guess we better play some music. So what are we talking about today?
Well, I hope you've recovered from our 3-parter, because we are we are taking quite a bit of a departure from what we have been talking about. So I hope you're ready.
Well, I feel we were deep in it. We were
Yes.
in the depth of the sauce of Scottish history throughout the Campbells.
It was like a month or more I spent working on that, between researching, writing, and then recording it with
Yep.
you. It's a long time.
It was a lot.
Well, this week we're kind of going more spooky
Ooh,
than just purely historical.
I'm ready for some spooking.
Me too. That's how I felt. I plan the episodes as far as I can ahead of time for a season, and I try to mix it up so we always have a bit something different. This season went a bit differently to how I expected because I had to change out a bunch of episodes. One of the episodes I was going to do is turned into a mini-series all to itself, but usually I try to keep it varied.
And that mini-series isn't the 3 episodes on the Campbells we just had.
Nope.
That's just one of the episodes.
So no, this is going to be a series unto itself that I have to wait and do once the season is over. So, it's fun. So we're getting spooky this week. I hope you're ready.
I'm ready. We got the curtains pulled over. I've got a hat on, a La Belle Rebelle hat, if anyone was wondering.
Kieran has legitimately been wearing it all week.
I have.
It kind of smells, you guys.
No, it doesn't. So I'm ready to get spooky.
Good, I'm glad. We've kind of touched on this topic before, but we didn't go into detail.
Interesting.
We actually first mentioned this topic all the way back in season 1.
Season 1.
Yeah.
You expect me to remember what happened in season 1?
No, that's what I'm going to tell you.
Oh, thank God.
But if you're listening to this, you already know more than Kieran does because you've seen the title and Kieran hasn't.
Yeah, I'm on the edge of my seat over here.
This week, we're talking about the Lochmaben Vampire.
Oh, is that with the Gorbals vampire from season 1?
Nope.
Is that when we mentioned it? Well, how can it not be?
It's not.
Another vampire.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Are you intrigued?
I am intrigued. I haven't really known about any Scottish vampires other than Dracula was written around Aberdeen.
Well, I'm going to tell you all about it. And it is something we've touched on before.
There you go.
Before we get into all the vampire chat, I'm going to tell you a bit about Lochmaben Castle, which is where our legend eventually takes place.
Where's Mabon and how do you spell it?
Lochmaben, Lochmaben.
Okay,
And it's in the northeast of Dumfries,
got you.
to the northwest of Gretna Green. So we're almost on the border this week.
Okay, we're way down south.
Yeah, we are about as far south as our jurisdiction takes us.
Yeah. Does anyone else have to never eat shredded wheat when they hear east and west?
Sometimes, yeah. If I get northeast and northwest, I sometimes have to think about it a bit more.
I have to do it every time. I don't just know east and west.
Also, I should say that occasionally I do get requests from people to do stories from different countries. I would really love that, maybe in the future, but we only do Scottish history.
For now, we're in Scotland until it's finished.
I've bookmarked all of the requests, so hopefully we can come back to them. Mm-hmm. But for the moment, we're just doing Scottish history.
Yes, we are.
I'm going to tell you about Lochmaben Castle, but the Lochmaben Vampire isn't the only vampire I'm going to be telling you about this episode.
Oh,
I have a bonus vampire tale for you.
that's exciting. But this isn't the folklore episode, isn't it?
Nope.
Isn't it? Is
That's next time.
it? Ooh.
Aren't you spoiled?
Because I'm getting taken back to banshees and things when I hear vampires from our folklore miniseries.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
We did at some point last summer.
We did our Scottish Fairies miniseries last summer here on the
Exactly.
podcast that you co-host with me.
That's me.
Okay, Lochmaben Castle. The first version of the castle was built around 1160 by none other than the Bruces,
Oh, very good.
one of the most famousest of all the Scottish clans. And this is before Robert the Bruce's time, but we are going to get there.
You hear Bruce, you assume Robert. I forget there were Bruces before Robert the Bruce.
This is about 200 years before Robert the Bruce.
Interesting.
And even before 1160, the Bruces were a force to be reckoned with. So before the castle was built. At this time, the Bruces were the Lords of Annandale. That was their title. And They started out as allies of David I, who was King of Scotland at that time. Mm-hmm. We're actually going to be talking about him next week.
Oh.
But this didn't last. Initially, they were closer than allies. They were firm friends.
Oh.
Huh?
Nothing.
What?
I said lovers.
I mean, maybe. I'm not here to judge. They were besties. Really. They got on really well, but they just couldn't make it work.
No, that's a shame. Is it because David was jealous that they were in charge of somewhere that sounds like an elfish land? Annandale.
Kind of. We're going to get to it. Robert de Bruce, First Lord of Annandale, and they went by D. Bruce back then. That was the style of surname. So you had lowercase d-e, and then Bruce was spelled B-R-U-S.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of the medieval way of doing things. Mm-hmm. So we have the Bruces, and they started out as allies of David I, who was King of Scotland at this time. Mm-hmm. They started out as allies. They were very, very close, very tightly linked, but it didn't last very long. They couldn't make it work. Robert de Bruce, First Lord of Annandale, and that's lowercase d-e and then B-R-U-S.
Okay.
That was the medieval style of surname. He turned on King David in 1138, but it wasn't just David that he turned on. He fought with the English at the Battle of the Standard, which happened in Yorkshire, and he actually took his own son prisoner.
Ooh, that's a turn of events.
As part of this battle. So his son still supported King David.
Uh-huh.
And when their loyalties had been split, they turned on each other, and father took his own son prisoner.
Oh my god.
As a result of this battle.
Yeesh. Well, if there's one thing you shouldn't do, it's turn on your son.
Gross, Kieran.
They're weird in history, I don't know.
I read that the English view of this battle, so how English people were seeing it, was that to stand up to and repel the Scots was God's work.
It's always painful to hear. Always rages me out. I never think I'm triggered until I hear something like that. I'm just like, God!
So Robert turned on David, but after some problems, David continued to be king. So he had been fighting with the English, and there was all kinds of stuff I won't get into. Robert I couldn't continue being the Lord of Annandale because he had turned on the king.
I mean, that makes sense.
With me?
Can't argue with that.
You know, you can't really blame David for that, being like, no, this is a bit dodgy.
How about get fucked, mate?
So Robert, the first Robert's second son, became the second Lord of Annandale.
Oh, okay. It didn't just, come out of the family completely.
No, it didn't, because this was the son who was taken prisoner by his dad. So he had shown loyalty to the king, so he knew he could give it on to him. And it would be kind of safe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, we're going to come back to this Robert II, this son who took on the title. He's going to prove important when we're talking about our fanged fiends later.
Oh, yes.
In the episode.
Already, I was settling in for another, Campbell epic, so I've already forgotten we were talking about vampires.
That's not why I told you why we're here.
Yep. Our fanged friend.
Yes, so we're going to come back to Robert II. But all of this happened before Lochmaben Castle was even built.
Okay.
This is just what the family were doing. Mm-hmm. The Battle of the Standard was in 1138. The castle was built in 1160.
Cool.
So I just want to give you a flavour that these were important people who had a lot of power. Before construction started on Lochmaben, the Bruces were actually living at Annan Castle, which is about 15 miles from where Lochmaben Castle would be built.
Okay.
Lords of Annandale at Annan Castle.
Just what I was thinking. Checks out.
However, Annan Castle had to be abandoned by the Bruces because it and the land that it was sitting on was damaged by the nearby river Annan.
Oh no.
So the ground and part of the castle just collapsed into the river. It was eroded completely, so they had to leave it.
Eesh.
And that's why the new castle was built.
I did think 50 miles doesn't seem far enough away to build another castle. Even for, not them to build a second castle, just in general, seems quite close by.
I mean, remember how much harder it would have been to travel 15 miles?
That's true. That would be quite a day going from one to the other.
I get what you mean, though, because they probably had a lot of land, so you would want to be strategic. But that was why they built the new one, because the first one fell into the river.
Oh, that's a bastard.
So now we're in the timeline of Lochmaben Castle properly. There isn't much to report about the Lords of Annandale until we get to number 5, who's also called Robert. So here we go again.
Here we go again.
He was born in 1215, so we've jumped ahead not quite 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he went on to compete for the throne of Scotland.
So he's running for king.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
He's now known as Robert the Competitor.
Ah, so he's still not our...
No, he isn't. But he's the reason we know Robert the Bruce.
Ah, so he's the pre-Robert the Bruce. Pre-Bob.
Pre-Bob. When Alexander III was King of Scotland, Robert was his regent. So he was ruling while Alexander was too young to do it.
Yes.
Alexander was Robert's second cousin.
Removed or just a plain old second
Just
cousin?
a second cousin this week. It doesn't sound like it's very close, but it turns out that Robert was the closest surviving male relative to Alexander.
Damn.
So he was immediately in line to inherit the throne.
Oh, shit.
Should Alexander die.
Yep. So if he's competing for the throne, does Alexander die or does he overthrow Alexander?
Well, we've talked about Alexander before, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He had 3 children, but they all died before he did.
Ah, yes.
Unfortunately. And this was when Margaret, the Maid of Norway, was made the heir to the Scottish throne. She was his granddaughter.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Alexander fell off his horse and died in 1286, meaning that Margaret would now be queen. But she was only 3.
Yes, this is sounding familiar.
She never collected the throne. She died on her way to Scotland in Orkney.
Yep.
Which we've talked about.
Yes.
So there is no heir, there is no one, because obviously Margaret doesn't have any children. She's 3 years old.
Yep.
Things are in disarray, and this is when Robert says, well, I'm the next surviving male relative. You could just give it to me.
I mean, what about me, you know? Anyone thought of that before?
Has anyone considered you could just give it to me?
I will take this heavy burden.
But unfortunately for him, 12 other people also said the same thing.
That's fair. That's going to happen, isn't it?
Now, I'm not going to get too into this because I'm planning a series on the Wars of Independence, and this is a big part of that. But I can give you the gist.
Give me the flavour.
Yes. Robert came into direct conflict with John Balliol, which is a name you might know, with both of them claiming their distant relation to the king was closer and more important than the others. So neither of them were particularly closely related, but close enough that they could quibble.
Yes. It's so weird, isn't it? Because it's just, like, it's not like you even share the same genetics, particularly, if you're, like, quite distantly related to the throne.
But you're part of the bloodline.
Yeah.
That's all that counts.
That's all that you need. And yes, I, of course, fully remember John Balliol and could tell you all about him.
You shouldn't. We don't have enough time.
Yeah, I think the people want to hear you talk about him.
I think so, yeah. I think you're just going to have to keep that in your head.
Yeah, all this knowledge I definitely have to hand. I will keep to myself right now.
You're such a shit. Such a shit.
Well, it's not like I've been doing this for 2 years or something. Yeah.
It's been 2 years and 2 weeks, and you still don't know the names.
I still don't know shit.
You should be so proud when you say that. That's not a good thing.
I'm the kid who sits in the, like, getting ready for the exam. And like, oh, so, like, how'd you do in this question? And I'm like, sir, we did not talk about this. And he's like, yes, you did. It was the first thing we did. Like, no, we didn't. I've never seen this material in my life.
No, you're the guy that turns up to school, sees everyone getting ready and goes, oh, is there a test? Is that today?
Is that today?
Oh, shit.
Oh, no.
Anyway, all you need to know is that Robert was passed over in favour of John Balliol when it came to choosing who would be king. Balliol won.
That's why he's Robert Bruce, not Robert the Bruce.
Yes. And when this happened, Robert resigned his lordship to his son.
That's like full Harry Kiri move, isn't it?
Well, that, or I actually wondered if it was ordered that he do this so that he wasn't a threat to the new king.
That seems more likely.
Because they had been directly competing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wondered if that was, you lost, so you can't have this title anymore. You can't have the power that you had before.
Yeah.
Because you have too much support directly opposite to me.
Yeah, fair play. Fair play, because it's quite early yet for Victorian, like, gentlemanliness, where the gentlemanly thing would be to step down if you've lost.
Yeah, we're in the 1200s right now, so...
We're a little smidge early for that.
Yeah, so that was just my thought.
Mm-hmm.
But it could have been that he just spat the dummy and went, well, fuck you, I'm not doing anything.
Maybe.
Robert died at Lochmaben Castle in 1295, but what he didn't know is that his son would go on to become King of Scotland.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Every time you say someone's died, because this is a vampire episode, I'm like, or did he?
Set you up to be suspicious.
Yep. He died, or did he? So his son is Robert the Bruce.
Yes, he would go on to become Robert the Bruce. So obviously, during this time, the time of Robert the Bruce, there's a lot of warring happening, lots of fighting, moving around, battling. It's a very difficult time to exist. And because of all this warring, Lochmaben Castle was abandoned by the Bruces completely.
Wow.
They left. Because remember, it was very close to the border between Scotland and England.
Yeah.
So in a war between Scotland and England, broadly, like, it wasn't a definite line, but that was largely geographically the case, so Lochmaben Castle would have been a target.
Well, you're going to get attacked there a lot faster than if you went to, say, Stirling.
Exactly. So they just abandoned it completely. From the beginning of the 1300s, Lochmaben Castle was actually held by Edward I, who was King of England at the time, who's on the opposite side to Robert the Bruce and the Scots fighting for independence.
Boo.
Boo. Boo to the king. It's just a personal opinion there. It's timely if you're listening to this as it comes out, but hey-ho. When Edward took the castle on, it was apparently already a ruin. So that makes me wonder if they did the thing where they ruin it on purpose.
Oh, yes.
So that the English wouldn't easily get the benefit of a castle. So it wasn't ready to fortify, ready to go. Because we've seen that before, and it would make sense to do that.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I think it has a name as well. I can't remember what it is.
I forget.
I haven't forgotten, but please continue.
Stop making me look bad. Edward was keen to keep the castle up, though, and he actually had it rebuilt.
I mean, I bet he was. He could just expand England's border, really.
It would be a good spot to hold. He possibly had it built in a slightly different spot. I think there are technically 2 Lochmaben Castle ruins today.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is when that could have happened. But it was a pretty bulletproof fort. Like, he put the work in, and the second version of the castle was much stronger than the first one had been.
Very cool.
So he was he was investing in it big time. It wasn't until 1384 or 85 that Lochmaben Castle was back in the hands of the Scots.
Until when, sorry?
1384 to 85.
Okay.
So like 80 years.
Yeah, a fair while. It's long enough to it have fallen out of living memory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you'll just know that your family used to have it. And then get a notion, we're going to take this back.
Well, imagine looking at that and going, that used to be Scotland.
Whoa.
It's weird, isn't it?
It is weird.
A movable border. The castle was under siege for 9 days before the Scots managed to take it back. And then they burnt the whole castle down.
I understand why they do it, but it always seems so stupid. Just, oh, we ruined it and we left and they got it and rebuilt it. So we took it and then we ruined it again. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yep, burn the whole thing down.
Do they rebuild it again as well?
We'll get there.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you about one of the commanders leading the siege, though.
A vampire commander?
I'm just going to say that about everybody.
Yep. Something like called it.
As far as I know, this man was not a vampire.
Okay.
This man was Archibald Douglas.
Again? No. It was Archibald Campbell's and the Douglai.
But we've talked about the Douglases before.
We
so this
have.
is Archibald Douglas. And he was known as Archibald the Grim. Just like Archibald the Grim that we talked about in the Campbell episode.
I'm glad you have this together, because I would have no hope.
It's difficult, I'm not going to lie.
Okay, so this Mr. Grim Douglas.
Well, he was the bastard son of Sir James the Black Douglas. So there's a line of Douglases known as the Black Douglases, and then there's another line at some point called the Red Douglases. It's just an identifier, I think.
Yeah.
So he was a bastard son. We don't know who his mother was at all, and that's not... It's more unusual for that to happen, because usually you don't know the father.
Surely, when it's a bastard, you usually know the father.
When it's a bastard, yeah, but usually if you're looking at parentage, you don't know...
Well, it's easier for a father to disappear, actually, isn't it? Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, right enough. I thought it was just another letdown of history. Been like, we don't need to write her name down.
Well, I think that's exactly what it is, so that he doesn't look bad. But it's more unusual that you don't know the mother.
Yeah, that's true. What made him grim?
I'm not too sure. I think because his father was known as the Black Douglas, I think he was given the nickname because of who his father was.
Fair.
Because James Douglas, his dad, had been a huge name. He was well known from the Wars of Independence. So young Archibald as a child, he had quite a lot to live up to. He had that mantle put on him and everyone knew who his dad was. So I think that's why he was called that.
Yeah, fair. Cool.
He was a cousin of the Douglas boys who were set to inherit the earldom of Douglas.
Okay. So he's pretty high up, apart from being a bastard.
Well, yeah, he's illegitimate, technically. Not technically. He's illegitimate, but he's their cousin.
Yep.
So they grew up very close. They went to war together with the French against the English in the 1350s. So he had a lot of experience of war before Lochmaben. He was actually captured by the English at one point after a battle went really badly for the French. He managed to stop his cousin William, who was the first Earl of Douglas, from being captured, but at a cost to himself, because he had to give himself up. At this point, I read they were just fighting with the French so that they didn't get rusty. They just needed fighting to do, so they were fighting with the French. That's besides the point. They were just doing it to do it.
Just did a good fight over here.
But when he was captured by the English, he managed to escape.
Fair play.
Do you want to hear how he did it?
Yes.
Well, it seems that the English didn't really understand the value of who they had taken, which worked in his favour. That they didn't necessarily know exactly who he was. One of the other Scottish nobles who had also been captured, Sir William Ramsay, helped Archibald get away, basically by causing a big scene. They were, I imagine, in jail or just in custody together. And then Ramsay started shouting and bawling about how the grand armour that Archibald was wearing had been stolen off Archibald's cousin's body.
Oh.
So his cousin William, the first Earl, Ramsay's claiming that he stole this armour. And that William's death had been Archibald's fault for not protecting him like he should have.
Yep.
The guards are hearing all of this, they're hearing all the havering. They don't know that Ramsay's lying, because obviously William had escaped. We know that, but they didn't. So Ramsay's shouting and shouting, and then starts demanding that Archibald take his boots off, because they weren't his, and he'd stolen them off his body. He has to take these off. So Archibald goes along with it.
Yep.
You know, it's the first rule of improv. You don't say no. So he's going along with it. He takes the boots off. But it must have been really hard for Archibald to stay in character when Ramsay started beating him with one of the boots.
How's he going to escape from here?
Are you curious?
I am curious. Just being beaten by this boot, and he just goes, see ya, and just runs off.
Well, this created an even bigger scene than just shouting, because now one of the prisoners is attacking another. So this really catches the guards' attention, and they finally step in. They start telling off Ramsay for attacking who they thought to be the son of a great noble, but they didn't really know. But this was when Ramsay kind of figured out what they thought and threw them off the scent. He told the guards that this absolutely was not the son of a noble. This guy was a rogue and a scullion.
Oh.
His armour didn't mean that he had money. The armour he was wearing meant he was a thief.
I feel this could backfire horribly into him being executed for being a thief.
Well, it's dicey.
Yep.
But Ramsay's hammering in about how dishonourable Archibald apparently is for stealing his master's armour and not looking after him. Really focusing on the dishonour.
Mm-hmm.
The guards are fully on the hook. They fully believe everything Ramsay is telling them. So when Ramsay ordered Archibald to go and find his cousin's body on the battlefield, the one that he had, looted for the armour, and at the very least give him a proper burial since he couldn't do anything else, the guards were okay with it.
They just let him.
Well, Ramsay paid 40 shillings to have Archibald released.
Fair.
To supposedly go away and do this because it was the right thing to do. And 40 shillings was the ransom that would be paid to release esquires from enemy hands.
Mm-hmm.
So like the servant of a knight, not the son of a noble.
Oh, that's some grade A haggling right there.
So the fact that the English guards accepted this ransom shows that they fully believed Ramsay's story and that that's what Archibald was going off to do.
Crazy.
And obviously Archibald didn't go back to the battlefield.
He just legged it back to Scotland,
He
presumably.
didn't bury his very much alive cousin that he had protected. He escaped back to Scotland. And that's how he got away.
That's a good escape story.
Although Ramsay did clobber him one more time before he left, just for good measure. And I do wonder if that was just frustration at the fact that, he's leaving.
Yep.
Ramsay isn't, and he's just done all this work to get him out, but he's still there.
It's like, well, that was the right thing to do, but fuck me, am I right?
Yeah. It's quite the escape.
That is quite the escape. I am well impressed with that.
I know it's not strictly related, but it was a very interesting story I wanted to share.
I like it. I feel that's the third escape story we've had this season, or at least recently, because we had Deacon Brodie escaping.
We have had quite a few.
Yeah.
Quite a few escape artists.
So I like the theme. His is the best so far, I think.
Well, I think because Ramsay was very smart about it. Mm-hmm. Archibald didn't really do anything.
No, he just had to go with it. He just had to not ruin the plan.
Which I imagine must have been really hard because he has no idea what the plan is.
Well, that's just it. And you're just sitting there being beaten with your own boot. That's not a fun time.
Be cool and not spoil it.
Yeah. Because what if he's just having you on and he just wants to beat you up for a bit?
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird to me, the system of, he paid his ransom of 40 shillings. I'm like, with what money? Did he have money on him? And then he was like, oh yeah, sweet, here you go, that's his ransom money. Because surely if he had money on them himself, they would have just taken it off of him.
Well, it could have just been the promise of money.
I guess so, yeah.
Because I'm assuming they knew that Ramsay was a noble, which is why he couldn't escape himself.
Yeah.
So him effectively writing out, not a check, but an IOU.
I guess it just goes into the ledger, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would imagine.
It'll get settled later.
That's what I thought. When Archibald made it back to Scotland, he married Joanna de Moravia, who was the daughter of the Earl of Strathearn. And apparently, he, quote, offered to fight 5 English knights in single combat for her hand.
Interesting.
Now, romantic or too keen?
I don't know, or just empty promises. Oh, see if there were 5 knights here. Oh, I'd be having them. Oh, but there's not, is there?
Someone hold me back.
Yeah. Hold me back. Hold me back. So yeah, I'm going with too keen and I call bullshit.
You're so romantic. Around the same time, Archibald became the Constable of Edinburgh Castle, which was a very prestigious honour.
Yep.
We talked about the Constables of Elandonnan Castle earlier this season.
I was just thinking about that.
Edinburgh Castle is a little more high-key.
Mm-hmm. But not the castle yet, because it's still Stirling Castle at this time.
It kind of flip-flopped between Edinburgh and Stirling. Mm-hmm. Different kings had their bases in different places. I feel like it might have been Edinburgh at this point, and then it changed to Stirling, and then changed back.
Still, big deal.
It's very confusing. He also became the Warden of the Western March. We talked about the Wardens and the Earls of March before. because these were very important roles, but very tricky, because their main job as wardens and earls of the March was keeping peace around the border. And trying to keep the border reavers in line.
Not an easy task.
No, that's what they had to do. We talked about it in our fairy series, actually.
Yes, with the red caps.
Yeah.
See, I pay attention a bit.
Yeah. Now, these appointments that he was given were the reason why Douglas was eventually one of the people to siege Lochmaben Castle.
Oh, okay.
Because when he became the warden, the English still held Annandale, but that was technically part of Archibald's beat, so he had to do something about it.
Ooh, so it's
that's his land that they're on.
I forgot what the phrase is. It's like you get given like a golden glove, but there's knives in it or something. So he's been given a really good thing, but he's got quite a big problem attached to it.
Well, yeah, he's got work to do now.
Yeah. So
he started raiding and attacking the English in around the marches for quite a long time, and the siege of Lochmaben was part of that. So part of wider raids. And by sort of 1385, by the end of that, he had pushed the English out of Annandale completely.
Fair play.
So he got it done.
He got it done.
Archibald was made the Lord of Galloway. And then, very unexpectedly, he became the 3rd Earl of Douglas, because his cousin William died of a seizure.
Oh, no.
The one he had been protecting. And William's son was killed at the Battle of Otterburn.
Oh.
So 1st and 2nd Earls are gone. Archibald is the 3rd, and he was never expected to take on the earldom.
That's quite a lot of power he suddenly has.
Yes, combined with everything else that he's gotten himself.
Yep. He's heading for a fall.
Well, he effectively became the most powerful man in Scotland because he had gained a whole lot of land through his wife as well, even though, that was hers, but it's not anymore because he has it. He rivaled the Campbells that we talked about last week. He had a lot of power.
They did come up.
Well, not like in the story, just as a comparison. But if you'd like to know more about these Douglases, you can listen to the Black Dinner episode, because this is the same family that we were talking about there. This is just the very beginning of it.
Yes. So does he gain all this power, and does he gain some fanged teeth, perhaps? Propensity to go out only at night time?
I told you when I started talking about him that he is not a vampire. He is not a vampire as far as I know.
Just checking.
Well, remember I mentioned that Archibald and co. burned Lochmaben down?
Yes.
Well, it stayed a ruin until the 1400s, so at least a few decades.
Yep.
And then Alexander Stewart, who was the Duke of Albany, owned Lochmaben Castle by sort of the mid-1400s.
Okay.
And he was the son of King James II, and this was the king that was killed by a cannon.
Yes. Always brutal.
Alexander's big brother, James, became King James III, a very unpopular king. Even with his younger brother, Alexander hated him. And he hated him so much that Alexander tried to usurp James and become king himself. This didn't go well. And unless you plan on winning, you shouldn't really move against a king and try to take the throne.
It's a very all or nothing move.
Yeah, and it didn't pay off.
Yeah.
Alexander was the Warden of the Marches and the Earl of the March, which is why he had Lochmaben Castle by this time. But he wasn't doing a very good job.
Is he being reaved against?
He was just kind of ignoring it. There was a lot of fighting and killing happening around the border, and he was just like,
That's not so good. Just burying his head in the ashy ruin of his castle.
Yeah, and it was particularly bad because King James III, his big brother, had managed to make a truce with England at this time.
Fairly.
And Alexander was wrecking it because he's not doing anything about the Scots reaving on the English side of the border.
Ah, I see.
So the English are going, what the fuck? We're supposed to be at peace. The king is going, I know. And then his brother's not doing anything about it.
Yeah, the king's going, I am so sorry. I put my little brother in charge. He's such a wee dick. That
wasn't even enough to make people see James III favourably, because a lot of the Scottish nobility didn't like James III. They felt he was doing a really shitty job. In large part because he was lining his own pockets.
Well...
And he was favouring his favourites. So he wasn't doing a particularly good job of ruling, and his brother was fucking things up.
It's not good.
No. Alexander did manage to mount a rebellion with the help of the future King Richard III of England. He wasn't king yet, but he would be.
Dick III.
Yep. And James III was held prisoner at Edinburgh Castle for a bit.
Oh, wow.
While Alexander ruled instead.
Oh. We talked about that before?
I think we've mentioned it before. But then Alexander got greedy. Some important nobles turned against him. He didn't have their support anymore. And he was booted.
Ooh, did he get to take his riches with him?
Kind of, yeah. He was left with a land around Lochmaben, basically.
I'm sure he did all right.
He had land around there. He still had the castle, as far as I'm aware. But James had been sweet-talking the nobles who had turned against Alexander, convincing them, well, I'm not so bad now, am I? So that was how he managed to worm his way back round. Alexander tried another rebellion.
Against the king again?
Yep.
Oh, you got out of it once without dying.
Well, yeah, and he still had like lots of land and property, but he tried it again. But King Edward IV, who was king by this time, died before the troops he promised arrived in Scotland. And then they didn't come at all.
Oh, I see. Well, that's not ideal, is it?
So Alexander kind of got caught with his pants down because he was mounting this big rebellion and then they didn't show up. And his ally was dead.
Ooh, something, not the dead ally part, but something that's happened a lot.
Yes.
Oh yeah, this country promised they'd help and then they didn't. I'm like, why'd you keep believing them? You know?
So Alexander fled to England in 1483.
Okay, so Lochmaben Castle, is it rebuilt at this point, or is it still a ruin?
I think it's still a ruin, but he still owns it, and he's still lord of the land around it.
Yeah.
So I think technically he is Lord of Annandale because he is like Lord of the Marches, all of that stuff. He still has those titles. So technically he still owns Lochmaben Castle.
That does make sense.
Obviously he's not living there, but it's still his, which is why we're talking about him.
Yes, but now he's in England.
Yes, but he was still determined to try and oust his brother. So he tried rebelling again the following year in 1484.
So what does he have to lose? Oh wait, everything.
Oh wait, his head. And this was the year the Battle of Lochmaben Fair happened.
Uh-oh. That doesn't sound good.
Do you recognise the name from somewhere?
No.
Lochmaben.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Kieran.
I think when the name of the battle, I was like, I don't think I've heard of this battle before.
Never mind. Picture the scene, if you will. It's the 22nd of July. High summer. And summer down near the border. So it's actually summer.
More summery than up here.
Not like 22nd of July here.
No, very different.
You know, it's warm, it's bright all the time, everyone's always outside and in a good mood. And I know that this is 600 years ago, but I'm assuming that these things transcend time.
You have to have always liked going out on a sunny day, surely.
I think summer was always nice. Every year in the summer, the town of Lochmaben held a fair. Lochmaben Fair.
I've heard of that.
From where? And this was being held on the 22nd of July, 1484. Everyone was out having a ball. The town was really busy. People had travelled to come to this fair. Who shows up but Alexander, along with 500 men?
Oh, no.
Ready to incite rebellion against his brother and mount a new coup.
I'm going to assume most people at the fair don't care.
Well, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
The men who were with Alexander were English soldiers rather than other Scots, I think, because he had been down in England. So he managed to rally some support and they came with him. But once again, Alexander didn't have the support of the English king in this new rebellion. He had decided he wasn't going to help him. But Alexander felt that he could still count on the people around Lochmaben because he was their lord still.
Oh, they're not going to give a fuck, mate.
You know, they were his people, and he felt that if he said jump, they should immediately respond with how high.
Yeah. The type of person who like has done everything else up to now would absolutely think that was true.
Right? This is not surprising.
No.
That just by right of who he is, he should be able to turn up and order these people to do whatever he wants.
Yeah. Who are all enjoying the sun and playing tic-tac-toe and enjoying a flagon of mead.
Right? Like just turning up.
Yeah.
It didn't go the way Alexander planned, though.
Oh, I'm shocked.
You might be shocked. The people of Lochmaben and just everyone who was at the fair saw Alexander and his 500 men, and they actually thought that they were the usual kind of English invaders that they had gotten very used to.
Oh, yeah.
Because it must have happened a lot with where they were. Alexander's influence was not what he thought it was, because they didn't recognise him. And they definitely didn't recognise his authority because they didn't really know who he was.
Yeah.
They'd never seen him before. These are English soldiers. Usually they come and take all our stuff.
Absolutely.
So the people of Lochmaben attacked him and his men.
Ooh.
Fiercely.
Okay, I didn't see that coming. Oh, yeah, much more of a fight. There's much more willingness to fight when it's fighting for your own home.
Mm-hmm. The people of Lochmaben were absolutely not having it, and they fought really hard. Mm-hmm. I read that it was extremely bloody, and people were fighting in the streets of Lochmaben and fought from the afternoon when Alexander just rolled up to sunset.
Wow.
And these are civilians.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily trained soldiers.
No, and at most they were picking up farm tools, presumably.
Just what they had.
Yeah.
They did learn eventually who it was that was attacking them, because they ended up being joined by several Scottish nobles who brought reinforcements to fight Alexander back.
Oh, no.
So the Lochmaben people did find out who it was they're fighting, but they kept doing it anyway, because they're just like, no, fuck you, you need to leave.
I mean, it's fair.
Yeah.
Who can argue? This guy's such a twat. It hurts my brain.
Now, what's ironic is that Alexander was joined in this attack by James Douglas, who was the 9th Earl of Douglas, a descendant of our earlier Archibald Douglas.
Did he join in fighting the, people at the fair?
No, this Douglas was on Alexander's side.
So he wanted to rebel against the king?
Yes, but James.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
Because this Douglas, it was his brother who had been murdered by King James II.
Yes.
So when he heard what Alexander was doing, he's like, yeah, I want in on that because this guy's a dick.
Yep, I mean, that's fair. That generally seems to be how loyalty goes. So,
I mean, he murdered his brother.
Well, yeah, is it, did you murder my immediate family member? Or can I gain lots of power if this goes right? If you've answered yes to one of those two questions, you're ready for a coup.
It's like an infomercial.
Yeah.
Now, also, only a minor detail, but James Douglas, the 9th Earl, was a twin.
Oh, that's cool.
And he was older than his twin brother by just a few minutes. But that was enough to make him the Earl, not his brother.
Oh, that's painful.
And I don't know if that's happened yet on the podcast, so I wanted to say it.
Minutes apart. Well, you've got to choose one of them.
Mm-hmm.
They can't be joint earls.
So he was older by minutes, so he became the Earl.
Ooh. What if they forgot, which one was which? It depends if they were identical or not, but...
What if they just, swapped it round?
Yeah.
To keep it fair?
Yeah.
Oh, I really don't want to talk to that guy. Will you do it? Oh, okay, but, you have to go and go to this dinner for me.
I was thinking straight, okay, you be Earl Mondays, Thursdays and Fridays, and I'll do it Tuesday, Wednesdays and Saturdays, and we can alternate Sundays.
So cordial.
It's because all the best dinners happen on a Sunday.
They do. Alexander only escaped the Battle of Lochmaben Fair with his life that day because his horse was fast enough to get him out of there.
Wow.
That's the only reason that he survived.
Oh, that really went tits up then.
Mm-hmm. He had to flee.
Yeah. you get ready to overthrow the king and in turn get overthrown by your own people.
In a small town. It wasn't like a big city. It wasn't like Edinburgh or anything.
In a small town where it's likely that there was cake present.
Maybe. I hope there was after, at least.
Well, yes.
James Douglas, was captured by supporters of King James III. Although he was just ordered to go to the Abbey of Lindores, which is in Fife. And he stayed there until he died a couple of years later. So he was okay.
Yep.
It was no big, terrible punishment.
You always assume when someone becomes prisoner that it's like in a tiny cage hung out a window, like that poor woman from the last episode.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just, you get to go and live at an abbey.
So just go and live quiet for a while. Stop making a nuisance of yourself. And I won't kill you.
Not the best. Could be a lot worse.
Better than being dead.
Yep.
Alexander escaped to France, and he lived there in exile. He was banished from Scotland.
Sounds like France was just full of exiled Scotsmen.
Kinda, yeah. And it would continue throughout history. Really.
Yep.
France and Rome. There's quite a lot in Rome and Italy. However, do you want to know what finally got Alexander?
A vampire?
What finally? This isn't all vampire, Kieran. Well, do you want to guess what got Alexander in the end?
I think he choked to death on a chicken bone.
That is a wild guess. And you had it so fast, right to hand.
I've gone out there.
I didn't even line him up for that.
Is it right?
No.
Oh.
No. Alexander died in a duel in 1485.
That's a more noble way to go than I expected.
With the future king of France.
Oh, that's kind of badass, isn't it?
Well, kind of.
I mean, it's at least like not a duel to just some nonce.
Yeah, that's, well, I mean, let's be real. Louis XII, who at the time was only the Duke of Orleans, he wasn't king yet, was dueling Alexander, and he killed him with a splinter from his lance.
Ooh.
So I have no idea if they were jousting or what, but he stabbed him and killed him.
Oh no. I wonder if it's that this, like, it was a splintered lance that stabbed him and he died, or he got a splinter from the lance and then died.
I think, I don't know, I assumed it was the impact of the lance hitting him. It splintered the wood and they couldn't get it out. That's what I assumed.
That would make more sense. Because it could have just been there was a splinter left in him and then it like festered.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that happened but with force.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Yep.
When he died, his titles and his property, including Lochmaben Castle, became the Crown's property.
Oh, so he still had this while he was in exile?
Yes, but he couldn't go back to it.
Yeah, that's funny.
There's certain rules and ways that your title and property can be taken away. So I don't know why he wasn't full up charged with treason, but
don't know.
He still held everything.
I suppose he never got to treason. Like
no, because he's led a rebellion. That's treason.
Yeah, I guess so.
Just planning a rebellion would be treason.
Yeah, had a good lawyer.
Now I think when the Crown took possession of Lochmaben Castle, I think this is when it was rebuilt again. But it's difficult to tell. A new hall and a roof were definitely added in 1504 because King James IV visited himself that same year, so it's documented. So by the 1500s it was rebuilt and in use again.
Yep. Presumably they put a big dank cellar underneath it.
A dank cellar?
Yeah, filled with like...
weed?
Mausoleums. Not that kind of dank.
I thought you were just like, oh, dude, that's fucking sick. Like, okay.
We're not smoking plot this episode, Ailey.
James IV stayed with Lord Thomas Dacre. Dacre? It's Dacre.
Dacre.
On this visit that he made to the castle. And Dacre was eventually Warden of the Marches in 1509. But before that, he was just a deputy.
So when he becomes the warden, does he get the castle?
Yes. Maybe.
Maybe.
No, I think the crown still owned the castle.
Okay.
But it was looked after by different people. I read that the king allowed Dacre to fish for salmon in the River Esk.
That's nice.
Yeah, here's my notes. But the condition was Dacre had to give several of these salmon to the keeper of Lochmaben Castle, which was an official title. He had to do that every year.
I mean, that's fair. That doesn't seem so unreasonable.
So castle is still owned by the crown.
Yep.
But crown doesn't live there.
Yes. It's quite a nice deal, really. Yeah, you can fish. Just share it with me.
It's pretty sweet. Or not even, share it with him.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They're his salmon. It seems so just calm.
Yeah, it's very mundane.
Yeah, I can't imagine these people just doing some fishing, cooking some salmon.
Probably did it more than people do now.
Probably. Strange.
Robert Lauder of the Bass was the keeper of Lochmaben Castle at this time. And his family owned Bass Rock, or Base Rock. Robert Lauder of the Base was the keeper of Lochmaben Castle at this time. And his family owned Base Rock, which is just a huge, big rock island prison, which we've talked about before.
Yes, there was a king who was prisoner on it for a bit. Yep.
So they owned it.
I suppose someone's got to, haven't they?
He was the keeper of the castle. It was apparently Dacre, the guy before, who found King James IV dead on the battlefield at Flodden in 1513.
Wow. We'll need to have an episode on Flodden one day.
Yes.
Comes up a lot.
Yes, it does. It was that significant.
Yeah.
It affected pretty much everything. Dacre was also an ancestor of Catherine Parr, who was one of the future Henry VIII's future wives.
There you go. She didn't invent golf.
My mind was actually spinning there going, why? Where's that come? Why do you think? I get it now.
You know, you hit a Catherine in golf.
Now, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but Lochmaben Castle really earned its status properly as a Scottish castle. Because apparently Mary, Queen of Scots, stayed there in 1565.
Did she not stay everywhere?
Well, are you really a proper Scottish castle if you can't claim that Mary, Queen of Scots slept in this room or sat in this chair or that her ghost has been seen on that staircase?
Well, it's always her ghost, but I feel like she got around. Which, considering she was in prison for so long, is quite commendable. But
well, she was imprisoned in lots of places and she travelled around Scotland a fair bit.
Yeah.
It seems like it was confirmed that she stayed at Lochmaben Castle because she stayed there at the end of the Chaseabout raid.
Okay.
We have a whole episode about Mary if you're interested. We're not going to go into all the details today.
Is the Chaseabout raid, is that kind of like Kiss Chase?
No.
No?
No. This happened after she married Lord Darnley, who was her second husband.
Yep.
Lots of people, including her half-brother, were really upset that she did this. So her forces were chased by rebel forces across Scotland without actually fighting each other. This was the Chaseabout raid. So she stayed at Lochmaben at the end of all this.
When they all had like a lemonade because they were exhausted.
No legends of Mary's ghost hanging around though. But I reckon you could probably find her if you looked.
Yeah.
She seems to be everywhere.
Maybe we should just start the rumour.
Yeah, we could do that.
We'll go and be like, I think that was Mary, Queen of Scots' ghost.
Oh my god.
I saw a ghost, it was so queenly.
It could only be one person. In the 1580s, after Mary's time as queen, Lord John Maxwell captured Lochmaben Castle.
Okay.
So taking it from the crown.
He's taking it back.
He was a nobleman who inherited a lot of land and power when the 4th Earl of Morton was executed for murdering Lord Darnley, who was Mary's husband that we just talked about.
Yep.
So the Earl of Morton was executed in 1567 and Maxwell did pretty well out of the whole thing.
Wait, he got lots of land and power and wanted more? That doesn't seem right.
That is generally how it works, apparently. I wouldn't know. I have neither, so I have no desire. He served on the Privy Council. He was warden of the West Marches. But in 1585, he converted back to Catholicism.
Oh.
Which was a big no-no.
Oh, that's how you make enemies.
Yeah, it wasn't really in vogue to be a Catholic at this time. So he was held prisoner for it at Edinburgh Castle, and they released him in 1587.
It's a damn shame how it does just seem to be, whether it's in vogue or not.
Kinda, yeah.
It's not at the moment for the people, but looking back, it seems very much the case. Oh, well, he's prisoner. So then the castle will go back into the hands of the crown?
Well, he was released again, but then he disappeared off to Spain, and he actually helped plan the invasion of the Spanish Armada that tried to overthrow Elizabeth I.
Damn. He'd been busy.
So he doesn't have the castle yet, because the crown still has the castle.
Okay, yes.
He was the warden of the West Marches, but that doesn't mean he owns Lochmaben.
Yeah, that's me confusing it, because I've linked those two things.
Well, they were linked to begin with.
Yeah.
But now they are separate. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I should have made that more clear. In 1588, the year after he was released from prison and then tried to raise hell, he continued his plan to overthrow the Protestant monarchy. Mm-hmm. And that was when he took and held Lochmaben Castle against the crown.
The goal of any good Catholic,
yes.
Probably, maybe.
It was his anyway. He was pretty committed.
Yep. So he has the castle.
Yes, he took it. And James VI was not impressed with all of this nonsense.
Fair.
Of him going around raiding and stealing castles that belonged to him. So James VI responded by besieging Lochmaben Castle.
Again?
Mm-hmm.
I was just waiting for it to be destroyed again. It stood for a bit. We got like 100 years.
It's had a hard time.
I know.
As far as castles go, there's been many iterations.
Yeah. But going up and down.
Now, it isn't clear from what I was looking at, but I think the keeper of Lochmaben Castle at this time, because remember there's always someone in charge.
Yep.
David Maxwell, who was different to John Maxwell, he and 5 others were hanged as part of this conflict.
No.
I think by the Catholic Maxwell's forces who were holding the castle. I think they hung these men when they took it.
Yep.
Which is nasty.
Yeah, brutal.
And I read that the Earl of Monkton, who was on the side of the king, had tried to end the siege by negotiating terms of surrender, but it didn't work, and these men were killed, which didn't look good for the rebel forces, because that's not a good look on anyone.
No, it's not how things are handled.
No. Eventually, the Catholic Maxwell did lose, and the castle was taken back by James VI. And Maxwell was now officially a traitor, and he was in the custody of Monkton, who had been trying to arrange surrender.
Who's there going, should have listened.
He said, I tried.
Should have listened. I negotiated a pretty sweet deal for you.
Maxwell was prisoner again for a bit, and then released in 1589, and by 1592, he was warden of the West Marches again.
So it was all for naught.
Yeah, kinda.
Again. Ugh.
But he was killed by the Johnstons of Annandale because their families had been feuding. He was murdered. And then it became a proper blood feud upon his death because Maxwell's son tried to avenge his father by murdering one of the Johnstons at a truce meeting by shooting him in the back.
It's not good.
And then, because he had murdered one of the Johnstons, he was executed.
Well, that one's fair.
So it just keeps going and going and going.
Revenging the revenge. Mm-hmm. Just like an Eilidh.
Excuse me?
Oh no, I'm in for it. I've started the cycle afresh.
Excuse me? When the Maxwells weren't wardens of the marches anymore, because they were traitors, the title passed to Sir John Carmichael. So he now held Lochmaben Castle on behalf of the crown. He had been in the favour of the English for a long time. And it was actually suggested that he receive a pension for his services to the English crown.
Damn.
He was well in favour with them.
Yeah.
He'd taken part in uprisings against Mary, Queen of Scots, during her time in power, and then later supported King James VI, who would go on to become King of Scotland and England.
It's an interesting, position being at the border, because they seem to get pulled in both directions a lot more, because geographically they're a lot closer. Both directions of the border, that is.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Because I guess you get more of the benefit of a strong relationship with England.
Yeah.
There's more money to be made that way.
More protection. Because that'd be pretty good if you get a pension from the English crown and the Scottish crown.
Yeah.
Be alright.
He did have some problems in that respect because he was well in with the English. But a lot of the time, the way he supported the English and Elizabeth I before James came along, it made him unpopular with Scottish people. So he kind of had to play the game. He could only go so far because supporting the English too far made people in Scotland look at him differently.
Yep.
But he was an important guy. He sailed with King James to Norway and Denmark when he went to marry Anne, his wife. And John came back early from that trip to make arrangements for when the couple would land in Leith.
Well, that's a big deal.
He was an important guy and he was well known. In the 1590s, John came into conflict with Francis Stuart, who was the 5th Earl of Bothwell. Francis took part and led several of the uprisings against King James VI, which put them at odds with each other. And John was ordered to repel Francis and stop these uprisings from gaining any traction. Francis was one of the big dogs himself. He was Lord High Admiral of Scotland. And he was a cousin of King James, which made it sting just a little bit more.
Just a little bit more, just in the wound.
His uncle was James Hepburn, who was the 4th Earl of Bothwell. And we've talked about him before because he was one of the main suspects in the murder of Lord Darnley.
Yes, the name rings a bell.
And then he went on to marry Mary under dodgy circumstances. So he was Francis's uncle.
I think it makes me think of Metallica. I don't know, one of the members of Metallica has a similar name to James Hepburn. Just remember.
You need to check. Francis attacked Falkland Palace in 1592 with members of Clan Armstrong. And when it was taken back by the Crown, about 10 of the attackers were captured. But thanks to the intervention of John Carmichael, only 5 of them were executed.
Oh. Was he one of them?
Yes. Carmichael wanted the men spared because they weren't, quote, habitual border reivers, unquote. So I guess his logic, because he had been in the area a long time, he figured they weren't, this wasn't a habit, like I said. They were pressed into the service, so had to by people who were more powerful than them.
Yep.
Or just made a poor judgment call, thinking they would make a bit of money.
Well, if they're not going to do it again, and if it's like, well, on my head be it if they do. But
He was able to differentiate between the attackers, between people he felt didn't deserve the second chance and ones who did.
I feel it's a lot sounder judgment than a lot of executing related trials have gone.
And I think it comes from him being someone who's been in the job for a while.
Yeah.
That he knows the area and he knows the people. So that was interesting. You don't see that all the time.
No.
Francis wasn't captured in this raid. So he wasn't taken and he wasn't executed. But the same year, Francis attacked Lochmaben Castle, which John Carmichael was ordered to keep and look after. And Francis managed to hold the castle for a little while. He managed to get it away from him. And apparently, he managed to break into Lochmaben Castle by dressing in women's clothing. He snuck in.
I am but a harmless lady.
And I would have to imagine that Carmichael felt a bit embarrassed that this ploy had worked.
Yeah. Oldest trick in the book.
It's something so simple.
Yep. Throw on a frock.
But Carmichael managed to get Lochmaben back in the end.
Out of pure embarrassment, like
He made
powering
up
him
for
through.
it. But I have a very interesting, to me, tangent about Francis, if you would like to hear it.
I would think of nothing.
Let's go. Before Mary, Queen of Scots, married his uncle, Francis was already in the Queen's favour, it seemed at least. He's named in the will that she had in 1566 And this was the will that was created when she was pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
So he's named as one of the beneficiaries in this will.
Uh-huh.
If Mary died in childbirth, Francis would receive several things. And it's one of these things that really caught my attention. And I want to talk briefly about because it's just kind of mad.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to guess what he might receive?
I don't even know. No, I've got nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing. A chicken bone.
Okay, what? Are you hungry?
I'm just reusing my guess.
Do you want to go have dinner? Because we can. We have that power.
No, I'm okay.
He would have gotten several sets of gold buttons and aglets, which I think are little tube things, and a slice of unicorn horn mounted on silver chain used to test for poison.
Come again?
Would you want me to read that again?
Yeah, yes, please. Yes, please.
Several sets of gold buttons and aglets.
The last part, please.
And a slice of unicorn horn mounted on silver chain used to test for poison.
Oh, it's dumb on 2 levels.
Tell me what you're thinking.
I'm thinking nothing but pain in my brain.
Pain?
Yeah.
Are you not even a little bit impressed or interested?
I'm impressed at the person who sold it to them. Not only did he sell some presumably elephant tusk or something as unicorn horn, but he also sold them extra because it tests for poison.
Oh, but you don't even know the half of it.
Is there more?
You really don't know the half.
Oh.
Do you understand why we need to talk about it?
Well, yes.
Because this has been itching my brain so hard since I found out just this tiny little fact that's not even related to what this episode is about. But I had to tell you.
Uh-huh.
So, in her mind, Mary really was leaving Francis a piece of unicorn horn. Mm-hmm. She wasn't lying in her will. I'm sorry to tell you that it doesn't seem like it was real unicorn horn, but Mary believed that it was.
Yes.
At this time, 1500s, it was really common for European monarchs to own pieces of unicorn horn because they believed they could use this to check their food and drink for poison. Now, they might have a chunk of it,
Yep.
a slice of it, powdered unicorn horn. Some really wealthy people even had goblets or cutlery or jewellery made out of unicorn horn. And if the unicorn horn came into contact with poison, the belief went that it would apparently change colour or it would start sweating.
Ooh. Crazy.
Now, there are no records of this actually working to detect poison. But that didn't stop them.
Just one very savvy salesman going around.
Lots of kings and queens and people of importance who had the money would spend absolute fortunes on these unicorn horns.
I bet. Do we know what they are?
It's kind of guessed at what it might be. For some of the pieces, we know what it is because they still exist. But, we can't know all of them. Some of the pieces are thought to have been rhino horn.
That's what I was thinking.
Or walrus tusks.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was common. But one of the most popular sources of unicorn horns was narwhal tusks.
Oh, I was just thinking narwhal.
Because they're twisty.
Uh-huh.
And narwhal horns can be massive.
Massive, yeah.
8 to 10 feet long, these tusks.
Yep.
Some of these tusks were collected by hunters as early as the Vikings.
I mean, you would... if you were sailing along and you saw that in the water, you'd want it.
Vikings would hunt narwhal and they would take these huge horns back, wouldn't say where they actually got them, and that's how a lot of the legends started.
Crazy.
And why a lot of these specimens have existed for such a long time. And to give you an idea of how highly sought these unicorn horns were, Elizabeth I had one that cost her 10 grand back in the 1500s.
Wow.
10 grand would buy you an entire castle at that time. And she spent that on a unicorn horn.
That is amazing. Hot damn.
The Danish royal family had a whole throne made out of unicorn horn.
Wow. Now that's cool. Even if you just take it as narwhal tusk, that is very cool.
So I know it's a tangent, but I Like, I might do an extra episode on it or something, because it's completely bananas wild to me.
Yep.
So I had to. I just had to.
You just had to. Oh, insane. Insane.
So the guy who attacked Lochmaben Castle was set to inherit a piece of unicorn horn from Mary, Queen of Scots.
Oh, that would be like a family heirloom and a half, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Jesus.
Anyway, back to what we're here to actually talk about.
Anyway.
John Carmichael, who managed to fend off Francis, ended up being murdered by the Armstrongs, who were the family that had fought with Francis. Mm-hmm. And the circumstances were a little bit baffling to me. I want to know what you think. One of the Armstrongs, Alexander Armstrong, met with Carmichael in an official capacity. He was coming to Carmichael because there's things he wanted to discuss. Carmichael was the warden, and Armstrong wasn't impressed with the job he was doing. Mm-hmm. Armstrong has concerns. He wants to talk with him as a warden. There's things he's not happy with. So he's coming to him with genuine problems. But Carmichael and all of his mates didn't really read the room when Armstrong came to talk to him, because someone thought it would be really funny to put eggs into Armstrong's scabbard. Which is where you keep your sword.
Yep.
If you don't know. So that so the next time he went to pull out his sword, it would be stuck there.
Oh.
Someone thought that would be really, really funny.
Oh, no. I thought it was more like eggs in your shoes, so he was going to put his sword away. I'm like, oh, there's egg everywhere.
Well, I think there's a bit of that, but, that was... The joke was that he wouldn't be able to pull his sword out.
Well, I can see that backfiring.
Armstrong didn't find this funny even a little. And he found it so not funny that he shot Carmichael.
That's a bit far. But, I just, as the joke maker in the room, I'm just going to defend that that's not a reasonable action, even if you don't like the joke.
You feel very personally attacked.
I feel like I need to defend this extra hard here to be like, it's just a joke,
It seems excessive.
Calm down.
But I guess maybe it was just the mixture of the disrespect and frustration. And I really don't know.
Prone to rage.
Yeah, he shot him. And then Armstrong and the rest of his group that were there were hanged for murdering Carmichael.
Oh, fuck.
So the whole thing went absolutely terribly.
Oh, that's not the tits up very quickly.
Right?
See, I was thinking he could just hit him with his, sordid scabbard.
Or the eggs on his head.
Yeah, because that'd be pretty sore. The whap. Ah! That's what you get for being a dick.
So that was what happened to Carmichael. Francis also had a bit of a hard time of it towards the end of his life, which I hid from you, because we've actually talked about him before on the podcast.
Oh my god, he didn't get poisoned, did he? Because that'd be a shame.
Well, he didn't get the unicorn horn.
Exactly. How would you know?
He was accused of witchcraft.
Oh.
Believe it or not. Around the same time that he was raiding Falkland Palace and Lochmaben Castle, he was accused of taking part in what would be called the North Berwick witch trials.
Oh. Wow. Mm-hmm. Full circle.
He was initially pardoned by King James VI of treason and all kinds of things, but then he changed his mind and his pardon was revoked.
That's not what you want.
No, and Francis was exiled from Scotland.
Oh.
So he spent the rest of his life in Italy, basically living in poverty.
Brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Without so much as a unicorn necklace to his name.
Right? How will he check for poison?
Mm-hmm.
But we know, Francis was in a position of power, and usually the people of power who were accused of witchcraft had something that the accuser wants.
Yes.
Or something they don't like. Not to say that any of the witch trials were on the level at all.
No.
But just it seems consistent that if someone of power was accused of witchcraft, someone wanted what they had. Or wanted to take them down a peg. And that seems to be the case here.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I've always kind of assumed it was for the nobility accused of witchcraft.
Well, that's what happened to Francis.
Fuck.
Mm-hmm. The last keeper of Lochmaben Castle that I could find is the Earl of Mansfield, who I believe is the keeper today.
Oh.
But there's a big gap. I couldn't really find anything.
It's the same one. He's the vampire.
Well, I think the reason that there aren't very many keepers of Lochmaben Castle is because it was just left to fall apart.
Yeah.
It hasn't been lived in or used for a very long time. So it's now a ruin.
Well, I imagine as you're keeping it, you're renting it essentially. So you don't want to pay for the repairs and things.
Well, no, and you're not going to live there.
Yeah.
So it's just been left.
Imagine just going to check on this ruin and be like, yep, still a ruin. Bye then.
But what you have to remember is that Lochmaben Castle has now become home to the legend of a vampire.
I had not forgotten.
Yes, you had.
Well, I forgot once at the beginning. I haven't forgotten since.
So that's the history of the castle. The story of the Lochmaben Vampire comes from 1991.
Wow. That's a lot more recent than I expected. That's
Right.
more recent than the Gorbals. The Gorbals. Gorbals vampire.
In 1991, Tom Robertson believed that he encountered a vampire around the ruins of Lochmaben Castle.
Oh.
He'd been told lots of stories by locals in the area about this creature that they had spotted lurking around the castle. They told him some really weird stuff. People were finding animal carcasses in the woods with no explanation about what could have left them in the state they were in. Just, they couldn't understand it. Mm-hmm. Tom claimed that these animals had been drained of blood, which was particularly bizarre, which is why people were so baffled and so disturbed by what they had found.
How did he know?
Well, Tom Robertson had spent his whole life hunting for and combating the nastier side of the paranormal.
Oh.
Which is why they came to him in the first place.
Interesting. So other people had found the animals and then came to him with you.
Because he had a reputation. In the 1940s, Tom believed that he encountered the spirit of Sita Perdine.
In the 40s? Okay.
When he was just a child, he was 7.
And I've already forgotten the name. Nita Sordine?
I just said it.
I can't do names.
Sita Perdine.
Exactly. Sita Perdine.
Now, I'm going to leave a pause for dramatic effect, or if you're listening to this, you can start shouting at Kieran right now.
Hey, don't shout at me.
Because you might remember the name Sita Perdine.
I do not.
We at the podcast know her as the Black Lady of Lark Hall.
Oh my god. Well, I'm embarrassed now. Now I have the egg in my scabbard.
She was the seemingly doomed mistress of Broomhill House.
Oh.
And Tom was a pretty major part of our episode about Sita.
It's that Tom.
Because his experiences with Sita shaped the rest of his life.
He had the monk photo. Oh.
Which is the vampire.
Oh, shit. Oh my god. Oh my god. I wasn't ready. I've got a historical slap in my face. Shit. Oh, please continue.
Tom believed that he came across Sita for the first time, like I said, when he was only 7. And he really felt that she did something to him that meant paranormal things happened to him more often, that he was more open to it. He had an infamous later encounter with her at a pub close to Broomhill House where a lintel fell and damaged his back. And he was pretty firm that this was her. She had done this to him. Now, we didn't talk about it in the Black Lady of Lark Hall episode, but Tom also claimed that Sita put a tiny crystal into his hand, which he believed kept him safe and warned him if he was in trouble.
Interesting.
I've seen a photo of the crystal. It looks quite strange. It's like a perfect cube in the side of his hand. And it became more and more visible as it started coming out of his hand. And then it popped out completely.
Yeah.
Over the course of his life.
Well, that's odd.
It's a photo he shared that was shared by a newspaper. It's a perfect little cube.
Weird.
And in an interview, Tom said, "That crystal saved my bacon on more than one occasion. When I had encounters with evil ghosts, it would make my hand tingle, and I instantly knew I was in danger."
Huh.
And he also talked about a time when he was about to kick open a bee's nest when he was a boy, which does happen. Ask India about it. People are stupid enough to do that.
Yep. Ailey's sister might have done that as a child.
But before Tom planted his foot in the nest, the crystal started throbbing in his hand, and it stopped him.
Sure, that wasn't just like a preliminary bee sting.
Oh, well, it's more frightening that this happened because Tom was allergic to bees.
Oh, shit.
He said, "I have no doubt I would have been attacked, so stung, and died. The lump has given me warnings like that all my life."
So is he mad, or...
It's spooky.
It's spooky. I grant you it's spooky. I remember him being fairly on the level as far as some of the psychics and mediums.
Well, yeah, he was very convincing.
On the Helen Duncan scale, he was much...
Is that official?
Yes, the official Helen Duncan to just fraudulent. He was not so fraudulent.
All of the interviewers and people that spoke to him, or the ones that I read, remarked at how genuine he seemed. Mm-hmm. And even if they didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that, they listened to him and they believed what he said.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe that you're not lying to me.
Well, I always prefer hearing about someone in his position who at least believes what they're peddling. They're not just making money.
That seemed to be the case.
They're not conning people. Because I think you have to be like... You have to do the con on purpose. You can't accidentally con someone.
Well, Tom was the first person to attempt a live television exorcism in the 60s, which we talked about in our Lark Hall episode.
Yep.
I think he had tried to exorcise the Black Lady, and then these accidents happened after the fact, and it hadn't worked. And he talks about his process of exorcism a little bit in the show. And this might be what you're thinking of. If he was called to help people, he didn't take any payment for what he had done until a month after he had done it. If they were happy with what he had done.
Yeah. And he just seems like he wants to help people.
Yeah. So all of that is why the locals around Lochmaben went to him when they found all of these drained dead animals. And Tom agreed to look into it for them.
When you go to hire Blade and you get Ron Weasley instead.
I mean, he's braver than I am. If someone came to me and said, "Oh, there's all these dead animals and stuff, like, will you try and figure out what's doing it?" I would hard pass.
No, I will not.
I don't want to die.
Well, my initial thoughts of this vampire are... I don't believe the animals had the blood strained out of them. I think they just probably died and bled out. But it's the 90s, so there's not any, like, wolves or anything.
Well, I mean, what's going to kill all these animals and do that?
Yeah.
We don't, if you don't know, we don't have any large predators in Scotland.
Nope. So, I think we have some sort of mountain cat. Lynxes or something that are super rare.
Well, you get wildcats, but they're not big enough to do that.
Yeah.
Or it's that usual urban legend of, like, there's panthers and shit.
Yeah.
It's just been released and you see them sometimes.
Nobody knows. But people know it's not that. So, I don't know. It's not even like a zoo nearby.
Right? It's confusing and it's strange. So Tom agrees to go and look into the Lochmaben Vampire back in the early 90s. His wife came along with him, which I think is admirable, because I wouldn't be keen to go with you to go catch a vampire. I'll be honest.
Should we make a trip of it? Well, I'm catching some sort of wild beast. Oh, but we never get a holiday.
When they arrived at the woods where the animals had been found, his wife Margaret stayed in the car and he went out to look at things himself. Firmly agree. That's exactly what I would want to do.
I mean, it's his job, it's not her job.
So he began wandering the woods, searching for clues that might explain what was going on. Because by this point, Tom has no idea that this is a vampire.
Yep, so he's just Scooby-Dooing it.
Yeah. Here's how it went in Tom's own words, from an interview that he gave after the fact.
Okay.
Just 15 feet or so just 15 feet or so away, stood the most hideous sight. A walking, decomposing corpse. Its face was as grey as granite, its eyes as black as coal. The skin seemed transparent, except for the purple veins protruding from the creature's dead, withered tissue. It was tall, but round-shouldered, and a hood was pulled over its head, dressed in sacking. Vampire. The word just popped into my head.
That's hideous.
The creature suddenly took flight, springing up onto a branch and gliding from tree to tree, like Tarzan on steroids. I was worried about Margaret sitting alone in the car, so I forced myself to move faster. I unlocked the door, started the engine, and put my foot down on the pedal to get away.
I mean, if to me he didn't see that, but if that's what he believes he saw, how did he not just have a heart attack? You know?
Isn't that awful?
He's not a young man at that point, 50 years after the fact.
Gross. Withered tissue?
It was the purple veins that got me.
Decomposing?
Yeah, not good. I think it was just 15 feet away, so everyone else didn't notice, who'd been like, oh, this is a bit weird. Oh, there's nothing around here. And then he goes there and like, well, what's that thing over there?
Oh, wait, it's gone. It's a wild story. But this is another good time to reiterate that the people who spoke to Tom and spoke to him about this believed he was being sincere.
That would freak out the locals.
Like, and just interviewers.
Oh, yeah.
They're talking to him, just like, oh, yeah, like, you know, it's this crazy story, we'll just chat to him. If he's sitting down and being genuine, so yeah, this is what I saw. It was awful. You're listening to that as an interviewer, just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, with utmost sincerity. You thought, what on earth? Yeek.
Tom was understandably freaked out after this encounter. He was convinced that this was a vampire, completely. He was convinced that this was the thing responsible for all the animal deaths. And he was fairly convinced that this thing was completely evil.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to go back.
I mean, that's not a reach of the imagination.
Seeing something like that, 100% born of the devil. And I don't even believe in the devil. Born of the devil.
It seems friendly.
He's misunderstood. I can change him.
Yeah. Every time I'm walking Odin and he's losing his shit, barking at like somebody for no reason, and I'm there holding this giant black dog who's barking, going, he's friendly.
He's so annoying when he does that, because he barks in frustration because he can't go and play because he's on the lead.
Yeah.
But he behaves as if he's thirsty for blood.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, he just wants to play and he just wants a cuddle, but he goes about it completely the wrong way.
Yeah. So, you know, oh, he's friendly.
Ah, is he? Fuck. Tom spent the next several years after this encounter caring for his wife because she was really unwell. Mm. And he actually didn't return to Lochmaben until she died like 8 years later. So it was a long time. Very difficult to be in that position, caring for someone who needs so much help.
Yeah.
But when he went back to Lochmaben, he wasn't disappointed.
Still there?
Here's what Tom said about it. I camped out in the woods. It was nearing dawn. I'd seen nothing. I walked some distance. Then I noticed a shadow. It was the vampire, stooped over like a hunchback. It stopped and turned its head towards me. It glared at me with evil intensity. This grotesque beast looked like it had crawled out of the grave.
Ugh.
Very creepy.
Very creepy. It's just horrible. Horrible sounding.
Mm-hmm. I will say, narrow odds to go back and see the vampire, like 2 for 2.
That was just in my head. 8 years later, you spend one night there and you see it. That seems unlikely.
But I guess with his background of believing... I don't want to sound like a dick. I'm just saying, like, he believes this is true because I can't confirm anything for sure.
I will sound like a dick. I think he's lying.
But you know what I mean? I'm not trying to do that. But he believes that his encounter with the Black Lady means that he is more susceptible to this. Mm-hmm. So, based on that belief, it would make perfect sense that both times he's gone, this vampire has come to check him out.
Yep. You know how I feel about ghost logic.
Well, I can understand this conclusion, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I could see how it would happen. Were this a fiction story, that would make sense as to how this managed to happen twice.
Yes.
What's he seeing, though?
Well, he took a photo.
Because, well...
Kieran.
Well, that's me told.
Mr. Arsehole.
What are you Googling so the people at home can find it, see it?
Well, I've shared it on Instagram. I will have it, if you're listening to this on Patreon, I will try to have it included in the Patreon links. As far as what to Google, if you Google the Lochmaben Vampire, it'll probably show up. But here's the photo.
Yeah. Zoom. Ooh, I remember this photo.
We talked about it in our Lark Hall episode.
Yep. Oh, is that him with his little camera?
Yes, so there's a few photos I shared as teasers for the rest of the season. There's the photo of the vampire front and centre, and the second photo was of Tom himself.
Hello, Tom with the moustache.
So the first encounter was in 1991, and the second one was around 1998.
Okay. See, the photo doesn't match his description. Because the photo is of a man standing there in a big, poncho.
He did say it was dressed in sacking in his original account.
I suppose he did, but I see
he did.
But I see no withered flesh and veins protruding. I just see a man standing in a coat. In a beige coat.
Well, you would.
Why, maybe. But it's just the problem with ghost photos, isn't it? Because if they're not good enough, I'm like, well, that's a terrible photo. What's that?
Well, I feel like even if one was good enough, you'd be like, shopped.
Well, and so in this one, there's clearly something there. It's not like a tree or a shadow. It's a person. But it's just a person. There's just a person standing there. It's not a ghost.
That was his claim. That's his photo that he took, and that was what he claimed he took the photo of. I can't confirm it either way.
Yes. Not a vampire. But I'm a dick.
Now's a good time to say that I shared a couple of baby photos of Odin on Instagram because it's his birthday tomorrow.
It is his birthday tomorrow.
I'll be sharing more tomorrow too. So, 1991, first time we saw the vampire. Second time was in 1998. In 2002, Tom claims that he received a letter and a phone call from someone in the States asking about the vampire and wondering if Tom would be able to capture the vampire without killing it.
Well, that's a bold request. Hot damn.
But Tom went further and claimed that the letter and the phone call were from none other than Michael Jackson.
Oh, he's gone to the bad place.
Because the letter was from someone called Mary Grant. But when he was on the phone call with this person asking him for these things, according to Tom, it was Jackson himself. He recognised the voice and felt that it was him.
Oh no. That's just discredited him so much more.
Well, he talked about this in an interview, and he made a lot of claims as to what this correspondence must have been about and what the purpose must have been. But there isn't anything to back it up. So he says this happened and then says, oh, they must have been hoping that blah, blah, blah. In the interview, he says, Jackson and his team must have thought that by taking blood from a vampire, a creature that had lived for hundreds of years, they transferred the regenerative cells to Michael to make an attempt at granting eternal life.
Oh, they must have.
Well,
clearly, they must have, though.
That's strange to me. That's a big jump from seeing something in the woods.
Yes.
There seems to be big leaps between, this is really weird and freaky, I don't know what this is, to, I know exactly what vampires are, how they live, and what they can achieve medically and biologically. And that's definitely what Michael Jackson and his team were doing.
It's gone to the bad place.
It's a big jump.
It's a big old jump.
It's a leap I can't make.
No.
But I can go as far as believing that he got freaked out by something.
Yeah.
That's about as far as I can go, reasonably.
Yep, I think that's fair. But just a bit of a wacky imagination, I think.
I don't really know what to make of that.
I just can't tell what to make of him on the whole.
Well, he was freaked out enough by what he saw at Lochmaben that he vowed he would never go back. Until 2012.
Oh. For the Mayan calendar ending.
I don't think so. I think it's coincidental.
He's going to sacrifice himself to this vampire that only he's ever seen.
He agreed to travel back to the scene of the encounter with Mostly Ghostly, who are a paranormal investigation ghost walk tour group, to investigate the claim of the vampire and try and get some evidence for it. So he was going to go along and help them with this.
Such a funny coincidence. Oh yeah, we're like generally spooky. Oh, we're kind of mostly ghostly.
I thought that too. We've missed a trick here because that's a far better name. I would love to do something with them.
Yeah, generally spooky and mostly ghostly presents.
We're a match made in heaven. If you guys are listening to this, I'll try and tag you. Just get in touch with me anytime. Anytime.
Let's set something up.
Now, I couldn't find any articles about the results of this joint investigation. I'm not sure if it went ahead or how they got on, but I did check, and Mostly Ghostly are still alive, so they didn't die on this investigation, and are still offering ghost walks and tours around Dumfries. And they last visited Lochmaben Castle on the 10th of March this year.
Cool.
When I wrote this.
Yep.
So very recently, they are in the area, and they are still going around.
That's cool.
Tom died in 2019.
Yes, I remember.
Which we talked about. And if you're interested, the crystal in his hand popped out in 2017.
That's really weird.
Tom claimed that maybe the Black Lady knew I'd no use for it anymore.
Oh. Did he go to a doctor about that?
I don't think so. I think it just popped out. Like the photo of it. I'll try and get it. Hang on.
Just if you spend your whole life with a crystal embedded in your hand that's slowly being pushed out, I think you should see somebody.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an odd one.
Because I didn't know that could happen. Because it can happen with, like, if you get like a splinter or something, it gets pushed out over time.
Well, this is a cube.
Yeah.
So I don't like it as a source because it's why I haven't really gotten too far into it, because it's the sun, and I fucking hate the sun as a publication.
Not as like an entity in the sky though, right?
I mean, no. So that's the crystal in question.
Gross. I mean, that's pretty fucking weird. It has to be said.
It's strange, but I haven't done any research sort of medically to see what else could do that.
Yeah.
So take it with a grain of salt, because I don't know how I feel about it. That was just his claim.
That's weird. It looks like a piece of bone. Blech. Let's give me the boke. It looks like a white head popping.
So yeah, he didn't have the crystal anymore before he died. So what do you think at this point? What are you thinking? How are you feeling?
I want to know if, like, has anyone else seen this vampire?
Not from what I can see. I couldn't find anyone else who came forward to say they had seen this thing.
Very
Nothing from
strange.
Mostly Ghostly.
Every time.
No, I'm being serious. I looked at their social medias. I couldn't see anything.
Yep. It's just such a good name.
It is a good... I swear, I'm not taking the piss. I looked into it.
Yeah, I don't really know what to think, because just one person's source is never very reliable, you know?
It's tricky.
I went there and I saw this. I'm like, oh, did you?
But then, are you more convinced by the number of people who claim to have seen Bigfoot? But that's purely a difference of quantity.
Yep, that's true. It's more nuanced than that. I guess I don't believe in vampires, so to me, he saw nothing.
Well, I don't have any science-based theories for this one either.
Yeah.
I have no knowledge of any creatures, Scottish or otherwise, that would look the way he described.
Yeah. Very unusual, very spooky as a story, but he was either seeing things that weren't there, or he never saw anything. I don't
Where you are.
Trust paranormal investigators. They don't see anything. They just get spooked easy.
Well, I have no science-backed theories. But that doesn't mean I have no theories.
Well, this is going to rage me out, isn't it? You're going to start talking about, like, demon portals, aren't you?
Excuse me?
Well, what?
You don't have to hear my theory if you don't want to. You can leave and I'll just tell the kind people.
I want to hear your theories.
Well, You know me, I'm nothing if not thorough.
Mm-hmm.
For this theory, you're going to have to cast your mind back to the beginning of this episode.
Ooh, that's a stretch.
I told you about the Bruces.
Mm-hmm.
And, they had Lochmaben Castle to begin with. But you'll remember, before they moved to Lochmaben Castle, they lived in Annan Castle.
Yes.
So this is like the 1100s. We are looking really far back.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of interesting legends from Annan from back in the 12th century that might have something to do with our vampire at Lochmaben.
Really?
Yes.
Do tell.
The first is related to Saint Malachi.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of him?
No.
I guessed. He was the Archbishop of Armagh, who lived between 1094 and 1148. So we're talking a long time ago.
Yep.
Saint Malachi is famous for lots of things, but the most interesting of them is his prophecy of popes. He supposedly had a vision, and as a result predicted the next 100 or so popes.
Bold.
That would follow. And the prophecy ended with Peter the Roman becoming pope, but his election will happen just before the, quote, destruction of the city of Rome, unquote. Now, obviously, I hate to disappoint you, but obviously this prophecy is thought to be a forgery completely.
No.
All of the predictions about the popes are super accurate up until about 1590, which is when the prophecies were first discovered and published.
Well, they were just written in 1590 then, weren't they?
Arnold Wion, that's spelled W-I-O-N, I have no idea if I'm saying it right, he was the monk who published the prophecy, and he's thought to have made up the whole thing.
Yeah.
But his story was that Saint Malachi had this vision while he was in Rome, which that seems to be true. That seems to have been true. He was in Rome. But then the manuscript detailing everything that he had seen in his vision was locked away in the Vatican secret archives, which again, I think are a true thing. They do have intense archives at the Vatican.
I believe it.
Until the manuscript was discovered out of the blue in 1595.
Yeah, that's horse shit.
So yeah, the popes after 1590, so after publication, weren't nearly as accurate as the earlier ones.
That's so funny.
But that's one of the things that Saint Malachi is known for.
Yes.
He's associated with that.
So how does he relate to our vampire friend?
Well, Saint Malachi was a major figure in his time. He was an archbishop. He's thought to have visited Annan in the 1140s. Not long before his death. He was a well-respected figure, so when he went to Robert, the second Lord of Annandale, who I told you to remember right at the beginning.
Yes.
He's the son who was taken prisoner by his father.
Yep.
He was the Lord of the castle, Annan Castle. St. Malachi asked Robert to pardon a thief that had been brought to him during St. Malachi's visit. He had been stealing. It's not clear what he was stealing, but he was going to be sentenced to death. And St. Malachi asked for pardon and forgiveness.
Because it's just a bit much.
Yes. Now, you would have expected Robert to do what Malachi had asked of him, because he was an important person.
Yep.
Even though he wasn't a saint yet. That happens after someone's died. But that's not what happened.
Oh.
Apparently, Robert ignored this plea and the advice that Malachi had given him, and had the thief hanged. He didn't show mercy, he just killed him. Saint Malachi was super angry at this insolence, this disobedience, this cruelty that he was forced to see. So Malachi cursed the Bruces.
Is that a good thing? Can you become a saint and be cursing people at the same time?
I mean, I guess that's the problem with that much religious power, that, well, what I do is God's will.
Yes.
So I can do what I want.
That's the dangerous road it goes down.
Malachi cursed the Bruces and seemingly cursed Annan itself, because it was soon after this that Annan Castle was destroyed by the river, causing the Bruces to move on to Lochmaben.
If you had cursed somewhere and then that happened, You'd feel pretty baller.
Hell yeah, you would.
Or a bit guilty, depending.
Oh, no, I wouldn't.
Yeah. And you wonder why I called you out for revenging the revenge.
So yeah, that's one legend which seems to be sort of loosely related, that there's this curse. But in my mind, this kind of feeds into another legend, which I think you're going to find very interesting.
Yep.
I was intrigued when I came across it. So I think this one feeds into the second one. It was recorded by a man called William of Newborough in the 12th century. And there's some contention about exactly where this took place, but lots of people think it happened at Annan Castle. In the original legend, the original account, William refers to Anantis Castle, which is why there's some debate. Some people think it actually happened at Alnwick Castle, but others think Annan Castle. And Alnwick Castle, I have no idea if I'm saying that right, is where they filmed some of the Harry Potter movies. It's
that's
a big,
cool.
Big old castle. You can decide for yourself.
Big old castle.
You're a grown-up. William wrote that he was told this story by a monk, and makes a point of saying in his account how honourable and trustworthy the monk was, which is a red flag to me.
Yeah.
But it is a monk. If he even spoke to one, it is tricky. And he said that the monk had watched everything happen with his own eyes, like he had been there for all of this. To me, it's a lot like he's saying, I am absolutely not lying. 100% not lying. I am telling the complete truth. Don't check.
I know, everything you're about to hear is firmly not a lie.
Right? That's the vibe. But I'm going to tell you anyway. There was a man, unnamed, who arrived at Anantis Castle, having escaped from York. So remember, we're near the borders for this, so it's not as far away as here. He'd fled because he was being hunted by the law and wanted a fresh start. So he appealed to the lord of the castle. I would say the Bruces, but if it wasn't Annan Castle, then...
Unconfirmed.
The lord granted him permission to stay, with the condition that he work and he mend his ways. So he couldn't go back to a life of crime like he had before.
Yep.
And he had to earn his own way. The man from Yorkshire seemed to be making a new start. He got married. He seemed to be having a go at a new life, but this didn't last. William writes that he laboured hard to increase rather than correct his own evil propensities. Why are you laughing?
Actually, instead of getting better, I want to double down on evil.
I'm really dedicated to my craft.
Yeah. I feel like I'm getting really good at it.
I think I could be one of the greats.
Yeah.
If I work at it. So this guy was back to causing trouble, basically. Before long, the Yorkshireman started hearing rumours about his wife. Rumours that made it seem like she was smooching around.
Oh no.
And he became extremely jealous. Very, very jealous. But he didn't talk about it with her. He just sat with all of his bad feelings. Which sounds healthy.
Yep, that's always a good thing to do.
Rather than chat about it with her, he came up with a plan to catch his wife in the act of cheating on him. So she couldn't deny it. Don't communicate, assume the worst, and just set up a trap for your partner. That sounds fine.
That sounds like a good idea.
The Yorkshireman told his wife that he was having to travel and he would be gone for a few days, so she would be alone, left to her own devices. I don't really know what his excuse was, because I don't know if he would have had to travel for work.
Who knows?
We know that he didn't really mean that, though. He wasn't going anywhere, because he was convinced that his wife was cheating on him.
Yeah.
But his wife thought he was telling the truth. She accepted him completely at his word. But rather than actually going away travelling, the Yorkshireman had one of their servants smuggle him back into the house when night fell, so his wife wouldn't see him. It gets worse. It gets worse. Really creepy. He hid himself on one of the ceiling beams.
Ooh.
In his wife's room.
Yep.
And he lay on top of it and hid there, looking down at her bed.
Creepy.
Right?
Creepy bastard.
I think it was fairly common for couples to have separate rooms in separate beds. I think that may have been a more common thing than now. I don't think this was just because the relationship wasn't working. But he lay in wait, I imagine pretty tense, waiting for his wife to cheat on him.
Yep. To spring from the roof and go, ha-ha, gotcha.
Well, she was cheating on him.
Oh, no. Wouldn't feel good to be right. So does he jump down, leap from above?
Well, believing that her husband was never, ever, ever going to find out, she invited round her young lover, far more attractive than her husband, and they started getting down to business.
Started smooching it up.
On the bed.
Oh, no.
Underneath her husband. Very creepy.
Very creepy.
The Yorkshireman was so horrified and so disgusted at what he was witnessing that he crashed to the floor because he fell off the beam.
Yep.
So he hit the deck, I imagine completely scaring this couple out of their wits. But he hit the ground hard enough that he was quite seriously hurt.
Oh, no.
It was no small fall. Like, he didn't get up again. The young lover bolted immediately. Mm-hmm. Pretty dishonourable, just leaving her to deal with all that.
Yep.
She must have been pretty pissed because she has a runaway lover and a raging husband just lying on the floor. Doesn't leave her in a great spot.
They're going to say a raging lady boner because he ran away.
I mean, it depends how long they were there. But it turned out she didn't have to face any of it because after her husband hit the ground, he didn't get back up.
Oh my God.
She inspected him a bit more closely and discovered that he was completely unconscious, but he was still breathing.
Good.
So she decided to be smart.
And murder him?
She got him comfortable, tended to his cuts and his bruises, and let him wake up again in his own time. And when he did, he immediately began raging at her, threatening her with all kinds of stuff because he had seen her cheating. But she answered with something along the lines of, I don't know what you're talking about. Why are you speaking to me this way? This isn't like you at all. This has to be the bump on the head. I don't think you're very well. I think the fall really did a number on you. You should go lie down. You're not feeling well.
It's a bold move.
So she's fully committing to this lie. And after he had finished yelling at her and once he started relaxing, his condition got worse.
Oh no.
He became far more ill. William says that his whole body stupefied and he was attacked with disease.
Ooh, that doesn't sound good.
This was not a well man.
No.
It was so bad that the monk who is telling William the story went to see the Yorkshireman at home, and the monk could see how much he was failing and tried to get him to make a final confession and receive last rites, because the monk was convinced this man was going to die.
Yep.
But the Yorkshireman refused. He was having none of it. As William says, the next night, destitute of Christian grace and a prey to his well-earned misfortunes, he shared a deep slumber of death.
What a way to go.
Very dramatic.
Very dramatic.
So he died from his fall.
Yes.
Generally known to be a pretty nasty guy. No one was too upset. Not even his wife. But he did receive a Christian burial, even though he had refused all the advice of the monk. He was buried properly. But this is when the most horrible things started to happen.
Oh no.
After he was planted, very strange things started happening. Packs of barking dogs started hanging around the grave, making just lots of noise and generally being nasty.
Creepy.
Then people in the surrounding town started claiming that they were seeing him.
Doubly creepy.
They claimed to just see him wandering the streets. They recognised who he was. They knew that he had died, but it was definitely him.
Yep.
Some of them even claimed to see him in their home.
Oh my God.
Everyone stopped leaving their houses at night altogether. So when they were in the house, they were locking the doors. They weren't going out at night because everyone was really scared about who they would meet in the dark.
Yeah. You don't want to meet an undead man.
So Although everyone tried to keep their distance from this apparently dead man walking around the town, it didn't really help. William says, these precautions were of no avail, for the atmosphere, poisoned by the vagaries of this foul carcass, filled every house with disease and death by its pestiferous breath.
That's a statement. Poisoned by their, what was it?
Pestiferous breath.
Wow.
And the vagaries of this foul carcass.
Oh, the vagaries of this foul carcass. Band name called it.
Things were so bad that people started moving away.
Well, you would.
They started finding new homes because it wasn't safe for them anymore.
It's just a bit too pestiferous.
And this is actually why the monk was telling William about it in the first place.
This honourable, trustworthy monk.
Well, apparently the monk was despairing at the state of the town because there was no one left in his parish to preach to. So the monk, quote, applied himself to summon a meeting of wise and religious men on that sacred day, which is called Palm Sunday, in order that they might impart healthful counsel in so great a dilemma, and refresh the spirits of the miserable remnant of the people with consolation, however imperfect.
I like it. I like it.
So that's his plan. He's suffering because of this, because no one's left.
It's good to have a plan. I like the plan.
And it sounds like people were really struggling, regardless of the cause. Something bad was happening.
Something bad was happening.
People are dropping dead.
And it's not often you get a healthful solution, so I like that.
Right. So the monk had this meeting on Palm Sunday and then gathered some of the well-to-dos around for a meal that night. So he wasn't around for what happened next.
What happened next?
There were two brothers in the town whose father had been killed by this illness that they were convinced this creature was spreading around. So they decided that they were going to kill it before it killed anyone else and get revenge for their dad.
Yep.
They decided to do this on Palm Sunday, mainly because all the well-to-dos would be busy all in one place, so no one could stop them from doing what they wanted to do.
Oh, are they going to dig it up and burn it?
I'm going to read to you what happened next.
Okay.
This is from William's account. Thereupon, snatching up a spade of but indifferent sharpness of edge, and hastening to the cemetery, they began to dig. And whilst they were thinking that they would have to dig to a greater depth, they suddenly, before much of the earth had been removed, laid bare the corpse, swollen to an enormous corpulence, with its countenance beyond measure turgid and suffused with blood, while the napkin in which it had been wrapped appeared nearly torn to pieces. The young men, however, spurred on by wrath, feared not, and inflicted a wound upon the senseless carcass, out of which incontinently flowed such a stream of blood that it might have been taken for a leech filled with the blood of many persons.
Bleh.
Then, dragging it beyond the village, they speedily constructed a funeral pile, and upon one of them saying that the pestilential body would not burn unless its heart were torn out, the other laid open its side by repeated blows of the blunted spade, and thrusting in his hand, dragged out the accursed heart.
Damn.
This being torn piecemeal, and the body now consigned to the flames, it was announced to the guests what was going on, who, running thither, enabled themselves to testify henceforth to the circumstances. When that infernal hellhound had thus been destroyed, the pestilence which was rife among the people ceased, as if the air, which had been corrupted by the contagious motions of the dreadful corpse, were already purified by the fire which had consumed it.
Dramatic.
Very dramatic.
To say the least. Excellent story. 10 out of 10 on the horror movie scale.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, very nice.
What do you think?
Quite a story. Not true in details. Maybe something like that happened overall.
Well, I will say that even far later in history, people were dealing with what they thought were vampires.
Yeah.
There were instances where people were convinced a vampire was going round, so did things to like recently buried people to ensure that they weren't coming back to life. So that did happen. There were, what's the right word? Not manias, but
Hysterias?
hysteria. There was like hysteria about this, and people became so upset that they were ensuring people weren't vampires. So that has happened and has been documented.
Well, I could well believe that they did burn the body, but I don't believe that it then instantly cured the diseases that were happening. Or the pestilence was going on. But there could also have been some sort of pestilence happening at the same time.
Right? Especially if they don't understand what it is.
Yeah, like all of these things in isolation could have happened, but they are entirely unrelated to one another.
Well, do you understand why I included it in the episode?
Well, the description of the body sounded very familiar.
Like a corpse wandering around?
Yep.
That sounds an awful lot like what Tom saw.
Yeah. Like
And Annan Castle is 15 miles away.
if you read those two descriptions, you could think that was the same being, the same thing being looked at.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's super interesting and kind of weird
Yep.
that two places so close together potentially both have a vampire attached. Unless Tom read the same legend that I did and went, here we go,
Possible.
maybe.
It's possible.
Now, I tried to be thorough. I tried to see if I could find any medical conditions or anything biologically that might explain all of the blood that they claim to find.
Yeah, that's odd.
Because that shouldn't happen.
No.
You don't... That's not how it works. The only thing slightly vaguely related was something called liver mortis. And this starts about half an hour after someone dies. And it happens because when you die, your heart stops. So it stops sending blood around your body. It's not circulating anymore.
Yep.
So depending on where a body is, the blood pools.
Oh, yeah.
So it sinks.
Uh-huh.
And because it's not moving around anymore, you get these big sections where the blood is pooled in the body.
Yep.
So in theory, that could happen because more blood is pooling in an area than there should be.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fully explain it. That's just the closest thing I could see.
Yeah. But there could be some artistic license, like maybe there was a bit came out.
Well, yeah. But after 12 hours or so, the blood doesn't move around at all anymore. So if he had been dead for days,
Yeah.
that wouldn't explain it.
No.
It was just the only thing I saw that was almost connected,
Yep. Just a bit of spice in the story, I think.
possibly. But if it's a vampire,
Could have the blood of all the people he's nubbed. I believe that's what vampires do.
I think so. That's what I've heard.
Yep.
But my larger point was, what if there's more truth to the Lochmaben vampire stories than we first thought?
Yeah. What if that was the vampire, and then Tom saw the ghost of a vampire?
Well, what if the vampire created more vampires?
Ooh. Don't go to Galloway. That's the... or Dumfries. That's the takeaway. It's full of vampires. Full of them.
But that is the legend of the Lochmaben vampire.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed our first vampire tale. Second. First proper vampire tale. Because... Oh, I won't spoil the Gorbals vampire, but it's different in my head.
What do you think?
Well, I want to see this vampire with my own eyes.
Okay, I'll wait in the car.
Yep, I'll put a crystal in my hand.
Sweet.
Do you think I can just hold it? Or do you think I have to squeeze it until it goes into my body?
I mean, it's kind of gross. I wouldn't recommend.
I mean, I'm glad I don't have a growth coming out of my hand.
Me too. I thought it was a really interesting story. I'm glad that we got to talk about it. It's one that's been on the books for a long time.
Yeah.
Since season 1, because I wanted to talk about it properly. And I couldn't do it in our Black Lady episode.
I thoroughly enjoyed. It's quite nice to get back to some spooking after such a deep history dive.
Right? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Just, we should really call ourselves Generally History, I suppose.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, as
if you're
always.
still here.
You can come and join us on the Patreon. We're going to go and debrief the episode with a blether, with all the notes I've got written down.
We chat about episodes, we answer questions, we go into more depth, we talk more about ourselves. Odin's here sometimes. It's a good time.
It's a good time. And you can get your Labelle Rebel merch still at generallyspooky.com.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's all great.
Cool. We shall see you next week. Bye.
Bye.